All right, I think we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Saurabh Pol. Welcome to Pol के बोल. How are you guys? इतना टाइम के बाद आ रहा हूँ मैं online. So yeah, sorry folks, I was actually traveling. I was working, but while I was working, there was only one thing most people were talking about. It's about the tariffs. The United States of America has put blanket tariffs on most of the world, and especially high tariffs. I think at this point it's at 245% on China, and the Chinese also has have retaliated with their own tariffs, which are at around I think 125% at this point, 150%. They're rising. The markets fell really badly. I think the Chinese stock market went down 11% on one day. Our stock market had gone down like 6%. The Sensex, and so many other international markets, including the US markets, right? They went down and they came up, luckily. And because there have been some exemptions from the Trump administration in terms of the tariffs. I think at this point, they're allowing mobile phones and everything. They are even exempting automobiles of some sort, if I'm not wrong. So this is good news for certain sectors, but I think for now, pharmaceutical sector is exempt, but even that will start very soon, is what is being told. And it's not an ideal situation, let's put it that way, right? I have done my BMS, which is Bachelor's in Management Studies, which is basically Mumbai University's version of a BBA, which is Bachelor's of Business Administration, right? And I remember there was this economics ka textbook, and I remember subject of economics, and one of the chapters over there was about tariffs and how the current economic order, the Bretton Woods agreement happened, and how the current economic order came about, and so on and so forth. Like how tariffs were considered a bad word. 1970s, 80s was when it was decided that, hey, you know what? If we really want free trade, if we really want the world economy to boom, we should be essentially looking at, a tariff-less world, or at least a world where there is as less tariff as possible. Now you must be like, and it was led by the WTO, which was obviously led by the United States, right? And so it was a US based order, the economic order that we had, and I think some countries did well, but no country did better in that time than China. Funnily enough, right? I think the Chinese have benefited the most. Very few people understand that the Chinese are actually allied with the Soviet Union until the 1970s, until Henry Kissinger kind of played his part and Richard Nixon flew over to China. He met Mao Zedong. And actually, the Americans and the Chinese became friends at that time in the 1970s. And then it took them some time. But the Americans and Chinese then, they started building it up. And to defeat the Soviet Union, the Americans were like, hey, we need an alternative, and that will be China. And China was considered one of the biggest allies of the Soviet Union. Both were communists, so America was like, in one shot, I'm going to, take out one of your closest allies, and I'm going to make them my ally. So that was crazy. So they actually did that, and the Chinese, unlike India, the Chinese knew, how to pick a winning side. I think for the last few centuries, our country hasn't been really good at picking the winning side. And the Chinese did that beautifully. And in the last 30, 40 years, I would say the Chinese have completely overtaken, global manufacturing. And, India being more populous than China, a neighbor to China, and having all the opportunity in the world as same as China, we just haven't taken it up, right? And in fact, at one point of time, the Chinese GDP until the 1970s was less than India. So India was ahead of the Chinese in the 1970s, right? But the Chinese were smart. They allied with the Americans. Indians were idealistic. Easy to say that in hindsight, but I guess what else can we do, right? We are in 2025. We are going to talk like we are in 2025. Even today, for some reason, we hold on to non-alignment principles. I don't think it makes any sense. We should be choosing a side. I know it is India's side, no doubt about it, but you can pick a winner and do well for yourself, right? I think India as a nation needs to, work on that attitude that we have. Not choosing a side is not a virtue, because no one trusts you. Then that's the challenge. But yeah, so far so good, I would say. Would we say that? I don't think so. I think huge missed opportunity by India in the last 40, 50 years, but now it's changing, right? See, the thing is that America is now going back to its old position in the sense that they were if a short history lesson, the Americans were an isolationist country. They were like, hey, whatever's happening in the old continent, which was Europe, because the new continent was North America. They were like, whatever's happening in the old continent, let them sort it out. We have our own things to look at. And their attitude, their personalities, and their foreign policy was basically like, hey, we are going to, the Monroe Doctrine also said that, hey, we're going to look at North America, we're going to look at South America. That's a sphere of influence. That's about it, right? We are not really that interested in what's happening in Europe. So when World War One broke out, the Americans were not at all interested in joining, and ultimately they did join. At the very end, if anyone knows, the Americans weren't part of World War One until the very end. And when they joined, it was like that is when the Germans understood, okay, once America is part of the war, they cannot continue. And the German, empire led by, the, the Kaiser Wilhelm, they were like, okay, we can't continue because America got in and they became a deciding factor. And one of the requests by the Americans was that, hey, to the European powers, that I think you should chill out on the empire building. I think this is not sustainable. This is not great. Please relax. And he was, I think it was Woodrow Wilson, was it? Who was the, uh, president of US at that time. And he was kind of laughed out from there. He's like, you're too idealistic. Yeah, thank you for coming in the war, but we did most of the heavy lifting. Bye. That's more or less, it's a very simplistic version of what happened. And but in the Second World War, this time Germany came even more prepared, and US and Europe was really at the brink. And I mean, the mainland Europe got completely conquered, right? Even Russia was, I think, 30-40% conquered, like, if I'm not wrong. They went right up to the gates of Moscow until they had to retreat a little bit, and they were beaten at Stalingrad. But what is very important is, even then America was the decisive factor, and they didn't want to get involved. People don't know this, right? Americans didn't want to get involved in Second World War, and they were like, boss, you know what, their war, let them handle it. Like, why are our boys going out there and dying? And it wasn't until the attack on Pearl Harbor that the Americans were like, okay, now we are getting into the war, and now we didn't start it, but we are going to end it. And it was basically, World War II was a transfer of power from Europe to the US, a little bit of power, of course, to Russia, and the Cold War, the end of the Cold War, which happened in the 1990s, 1989, 1990. The Berlin Wall fell, I think, 1991, and that is when America was like, hey, we are the only superpower in the whole world. And basically, Europe was like, wow, we won, Western Europe at least, and the Americans combined, they won three consecutive wars, right? It was World War One, World War Two, and the Cold War, right? So these were three major wars that they won consecutively, and it was like, and I think it was Francis Fukuyama, a very famous author. He said that this is the end of history, that the liberal world order is what it is, and this is how everything's going to be. This is the perfect form of governance. This is the perfect form of economics. That time is over. The end of history was not the end of history. It was a beautifully titled book. And now the reality is that the world is changing. It's a multipolar world. And in the last 30-40 years, China has really grown. India is still trying to grow because we take our own sweet time in doing good things. And China has now become an extremely powerful country, right? Which it wasn't. Or even 10 years ago, it wasn't that powerful. But today, it is extremely powerful, right? And the president and the vice president of United States realized during the 2020 pandemic that when supply chains are gone, they are extremely dependent on critical strategic items on China. Now they realize, hey man, we need to diversify our supply chain. There needs to be a China plus one strategy. They started outsourcing basically because the Chinese were like, hey, if you're doing something for $10, we'll do it for $1, and we're going to do it faster, best, and better, and with minimal regulation. So who wouldn't take that deal? Which is where Chinese manufacturing really boomed, and the Chinese, the top-down approach in China really performed well. I think it really helped them. And I know you must be like, "Arey, India ka baat karo, India ka baat karo." See, that is what I'm trying to set some context, right? If you're staying with me, that's great. You'll learn a little bit. So India did not focus on manufacturing. In fact, in the 1990s, I think one of the highest. So, what is the percentage of GDP that manufacturing contributes, right? It used to be around 17-18% in the 90s for India. Today it is like around 12 to 13%, the latest numbers that I am aware of, right? So our percentage of manufacturing contributing to our GDP has reduced in the last 30 years, right? Services has increased. The problem with services, it is not as scalable as manufacturing is. Although at this point of time, I think we have done fairly well, right? Fairly well with services. But manufacturing is where it's at. Ultimately, a country of our size cannot just have only services or only manufacturing. It needs to have both, right? And now, and for years, for decades, the entire world is begging India to pick up. They're like, कि भाई हो गया कर लो थोड़ा manufacturing कर लो. It can't always be China. It can't be only China, right? But we just haven't been able to do any labor reform, any land reform, and it's just like chalte hi ja raha hai. Like our okay, fun fact, like not so fun fact, the Chinese have like a 28 or 30% of the world manufacturing output share. India has 2.8 to 3%. We are 1/10 of the Chinese. It's embarrassing. We have more people than them. I mean, again, right? Like it's so embarrassing, and the world wants us to do well. You must be like, हमारे खिलाफ लोग हैं. अरे कोई नहीं है भाई. People are begging us to pick up. They are like, अरे भाई कर लो यार. हो तो नहीं रहा है हमसे, because they know the only country that can do things that China does at scale is us. The Vietnamese are doing it. Actually, China plus one is basically the plus one is Vietnam at this point. It's not India. It's Vietnam, and in some parts even Indonesia. You know, we have completely cocked it up when it comes to manufacturing. I mean, what 55% of our country is still in farming, is still in agriculture. At least like overall agriculture, not farming. Farming is a part of it. So, and this is like we're still an agrarian economy, which is not going to serve us well. It's not serving us well right now, also. But it's a tough topic, right? Because it's not even like if we have so many people in agriculture, we are doing well for them. We are not. They're suffering. They deserve to get better things in life, right? But it's not happening. Until we move out of agriculture, we are not going to develop. That's as simple as that. And because it's been for decades, right? I was a child, they're saying agriculture is suffering. I'm an adult, they're saying agriculture is suffering. And no one ever says anything good about agriculture in India, right? Ki, next 10 years, agriculture is going to pick up. Like, none of that is happening or is going to happen. Let's be frank. And I'm not going to go into agricultural reforms and all, but they are related to manufacturing in India, right? These tariffs are nothing but America signaling to the world we do not want to be dependent on China. Okay, मैं मुद्दे पे आ रहा हूँ. It is the Chinese who have also heard this. Now they are like, boss, we need to find like a market for ourselves, because like majority of their exports are to the Americans. There's a huge export to the Americans, right? If you just drown out the noise, you will realize this is geopolitics. This is not economics. I mean, of course, it is economics. This is geopolitics. And India, if we have any luck for that matter, because India तो मैं भगवान भरोसे हूँ यार इस देश पे. When it comes to certain policy making, मैं तो भगवान भरोसे हूँ. If God loves us, we will do something well in manufacturing, because the amount of people we have. यार सब लोग डिलीवरी ड्राइवर नहीं बन सकते यार. सब लोग आईटी में नहीं जा सकते. सब लोग एआई पे काम नहीं कर सकते. We need people in manufacturing. We also need people in services, right? And we also need to outsource our own people outside, right? So because the world has a shortage of labor, and if robotics actually picks up along with AI in the next 10-15 years, maybe they will be able to plug that gap. But I don't know, I still think they will need a lot of human resources, and the one country which has a lot of human resources and wants to send its people outside is us, right? And whether they like it or not, Indians are the solution for at least low level labor. I mean, I heard like there are people from India working in the farms of Italy illegally. I'm reading newspapers and I'm like, what are people from India doing in southern Italy, and what the hell is going on? Which speaks a lot about both the countries, right? Like, why do you need us? And us, like, why are our people going to Italy to work in farms? Like, we're not working in their fashion houses. Like, like what the hell is going on? It's not a good look, right? So anyway, the point is that I think Indians, we should be taking up any job that we get at this point. The average Indian, so to say, unskilled, low level, labor, because everyone deserves a dignified living and you need a job for it. UBI nahi hai desh mein. UBI stands for Universal Basic Income. So we need manufacturing. At this point, we are literally, I mean, there is UBI in a way. We have the NREGA program, which is the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which is basically like paying people so much that the local manufacturers in India, the small and medium enterprises, they're like, we don't get labor. We have a labor shortage. In a country which has sky high unemployment, we also somehow have a labor shortage. You know that there is a huge labor shortage. Even companies like L&T, who need so many people who are plumbers, masons, and so on and so forth. Their attrition levels are 300%. They're like, ki boss, humko, we have to hire, if we need 100 people, we have to hire 400 people. तब जाके they are like we are able to complete like our 100 ka quota, because people leave in 2 to 3 months. They go to the village and they work on the farms and so on and so forth. So I mean, agriculture, with 50 plus percent, 50 to 55% of our population employed in it, contributes 15 to 16% of our GDP. It's an emotional topic, so no one wants to touch it with a barge pole. It's a politically heavy topic, because when you have half the country as agriculture, who's going to vote for you? You can't say bad things about agriculture and get votes. As simple as that, right? So, manufacturing is the way to go forward. See, you will never see any country say, you know what, how are we going to go forward? Agriculture. Like 10,000 years ago, maybe not today, right? Like, when was agriculture invented? Like, how many million years ago? I think I need to recheck it, but it wasn't in 2004, right? Agriculture was invented many years ago. It's a At this point, they're making food in labs in San Francisco. I'm scared about it. I'm scared about it because हम लोग खरीद के खा लेंगे. What about the poor people in my country who are dependent on agriculture? Are they going to compete with labs in San Francisco? Is that, I mean, of course, no one's going to eat lab food from San Francisco in 2035. They will in 2075. Huh? That's my point, right? 50 years down the line, it will be extremely normalized. Who knows, even before that? That's the whole point. वैसे भी most of the food that we eat is processed at this point, right? It is synthetic, flavors are synthetic, and so on and so forth. So we might as well go the full haul. You get my point? So manufacturing is a solution for India and not just an opportunity, right? And these tariffs are essentially, you know, a way for us to be like, and we are working on the free trade agreement, by the way, with the Americans. Also, by the way, Trump said, Trump said that India is the tariff king, and ultimately हम पे ज़्यादा tariff लगाया नहीं है, and we are anyway working out a deal on the free trade agreement with the Americans. I think it will get done in the next month or so, correct? So next month or next to next month तक हो जाएगा. So that is something which I am very positive about. I think that is a smart way of going about it by India, and really looking forward to a free trade agreement. I think we even are working on free trade agreements with multiple countries. And see, pehle there was a framework, right? Like, hey, minimal tariffs and there will be free trade and so on and so forth, other than tariffs on, critical industries like farming and all of that, chota mota. But now it is like every country for itself. That is the reality. Now the reality is that we have every country for itself, and so most countries are then coming together and they're like, "Chalo, let's do something." The Indians are dealing with the Americans, the Chinese are dealing with ASEAN countries, the Singaporeans. तो like हर दिन हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स का वीडियो आता रहता है कि सिंगापुर का प्राइम मिनिस्टर कुछ बोल रहा है, सिंगापुर का प्रेसिडेंट कुछ बोल रहा है. उन लोगों को तो वाट लग गया because they're completely based on trade. So they are like, okay, the free trade agreements that we need to do now. Earlier, there was like a global umbrella. Now there is no more global umbrella. Now you have to go out and fend for yourself. With every country, you need to sort out one each deal for yourself, right? The Americans are like, boss, we are the biggest market in the whole world, the most important market in the whole world. We want our share of the pie. That is the argument made by the current US administration, right? And fair enough. Like, I don't understand much of it, but I do understand this is less economics, more geopolitics. And India as a nation needs to understand that we have 10 years to do something about manufacturing. Okay. And we have 25 years overall to develop, because then we are going to get old, and let's not get older before we get richer. Correct. So that is the problem. We don't have, it's not inevitable. India's rise is not at all inevitable. We need to work hard for it. Not 75 hours or 90 hours, but we need to work hard for it, right? And we need to work hard in the right areas. We can't just keep doing outsourcing. We can't just keep doing services, and we can't just like dream about manufacturing. Manufacturing has to become a reality, correct? So there is that. I mean, mad respect to Mahatma Gandhi, but India doesn't reside in its villages anymore. There is a huge outflow of people from villages to urban areas, and that is purely because there are not enough jobs or economic activity in the villages. As simple as that. We need our hinterland to become, a hub for manufacturing, because cities can't become manufacturing hubs at this point. We need towns and villages to become manufacturing hubs. Correct. Our cities don't have place for people to sit and have a cup of tea properly. कहाँ manufacturing करोगे? Correct. We'll become like logistics hubs and service industry hubs. But so I think this is a win-win for the nation, because all the congestion in the cities will also go back a little bit, hopefully. So I mean that is my belief. Let me check some of my notes which I had. Like, yeah, Make in India was their complete failure. I would say at this point, hopefully it improves. And Apple is talking about, Tesla is talking about manufacturing in India. Apple is already manufacturing in India the iPhones and so on and so forth. So that is great, right? The Americans are like, hey, manufacture at home. All the outsourcing that you did in China, I want it back in America. But is that really going to be possible? I don't know. But yeah, what they're truly saying is, okay, if nothing else, the strategically critical elements and items need to be manufactured in the US. And that makes sense. I would say that makes sense. That whole thing about, hey, when there's a pandemic, we don't even have our own gloves and masks because there is a supply shortage in China. That is a horrible look. That's a horrible look. And they kind of figured that 5 years ago, and they are like, this is very scary. And at the time of a war, I don't think we'll be prepared. And that is what those are direct quotes, right, from their leaders. You need to have that strategic capability. You need to retain that flexibility in your life, in your country, and then your supply chain. It can't be that fragile that you have a dependency on only one country, that you outsource 100%. Now the new normal will be like, hey man, you will be outsourcing like 80% at max. 20% of the most important things you're going to keep with yourself. So that is what it is. That's the way I see it. And yeah, hopefully Make in India stops being just a slogan and a reality. वो धक्का मार मार के हो रहा है मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडिया में. But if our economy needs to grow by 9-10%, we need major land reform, we need major labor reform. And it's not only the big companies that need to do well, right? We have small and medium enterprises too. They need to do well. Okay, we need millions of small companies to come up and manufacture. They need credit and they need like ease of doing business. हम उनको बस harass नहीं करना है कि धंधा स्टार्ट करेगा, ये ले तेरे को मारने आता हूँ. Simplify the tax code, make things easy. That is the only way to go forward, I personally feel. I mean, I obviously don't have all the answers, but the little bit of what I know, is what I can say about these things. But one thing I'm very sure of, we cannot become a superpower or even close to one without manufacturing. I mean, with all due respect to experts, whatever here and there. So let me take some questions. I've like Ajay is like, hi Ajay. Ajay is like, it's an opportunity for India. I think yes, yeah, 100% it's an opportunity for India. We have 10 years, guys. We have 10 years to develop our manufacturing base. वो हुआ तो हुआ, नहीं हुआ तो अपनी बात. That's the whole thing. So Lost Soul is like, let's start small. We hope some manufacturing companies invest here, but China will be replaced not by India, but India, Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, and even Sri Lanka. India has a big competition. Beautiful point, Lost Soul. Beautiful point. This is exactly what I said, right? I think I missed out on Sri Lanka. Although I think Sri Lanka is not that much of a heavyweight, but yeah, the ASEAN countries that you see, Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, those are really powerful, right? They are a great alternative to China. I think they're much easier, much better also nearby to China also. India has its own set of rules. It has own set of complexities. Um, for some reason, we are very proud of having weak governments at the center. We think that is very fantastic for us. Ki, wow, it shows the plurality of India, and the strength of democracies in India is when there is a weak prime minister. I don't know what the fuck that even means. That's the stupidest argument I've ever heard. I mean, can we have some strong action when it comes to policies, positive policies that will have benefit for decades to come? Can we have that? No, perhaps because we want to look like we are a democracy I mean, I'm a huge fan of democracy. I've even put out a video saying that we cannot have a dictator. We'll never have a dictator, at least not in the current form the country is in. We should not have a dictator. But what I mean is a strong, decisive government at the center is extremely important. We need some uniformity in the way this country runs, right? Especially at an economic policy level. So that discipline is very much needed. But yeah, if we are free from religion, caste, region, on all that nonsense, maybe we will focus on some economic growth. Maybe. Jess is like, Saurabh Dada, please make video on MBA students profile making and guidance mentorship. I don't know what that even means, bro. That's very generic. Karthik is like, hey Paul, long time. Hey, it's been a long time. Yeah, I was a bit busy. It took me a while to get not busy. Let me put it that way. Kumar Nigam is like, Saurabh is equal to 7 Thala for a reason. Yes. Thala used to be a compliment 3 years ago. Today, I don't think so. Matlab, to, I don't know. Lost Soul is like, what about the smile curve as said by Raghuram Rajan? What does smile curve mean by Raghuram Rajan? Let me check what that means, because yeah, I know. I personally feel Mr. Rajan is an incredible man. He's a great man, firstly, because he firstly is a gold medalist from IIM Ahmedabad. His father was one of the founding members of RNAW. Okay, I don't know how many of you know this. He teaches at the Chicago School of Business, which is like the mecca of economics. Uh, you know, he's incredible, right? I have massive respect for him. RBI governor and all of that. Massive respect, you know. But I completely disagree with him. That India has lost its manufacturing capability, or the chance is gone, and so on and so forth. And he says, avoid manufacturing, this and that. Like exact quotes are like, avoid manufacturing and all. That's the thing. If anyone can explain what he means by the smile curve, I'm trying to check online. I'm trying to check online, but uh, I'm not getting that understanding at this point. But what I personally feel is, for a country our size, we can't give up on manufacturing. हो ही नहीं सकता यार. अरे यार, not everyone's supposed to sit in front of a computer. What's so difficult to understand? And we can't generate so much money to give everyone UBI. हम सबको फ्री का पैसा नहीं बांट सकते. नहीं है देश में उतना पैसा. पागल हो गए हो क्या? We need manufacturing, and we need people busy, by the way. I don't know if people understand. We need people to be busy. Yeah, Lost Soul, thank you for explaining. He said that India should not invest in manufacturing, but invest more on advanced service sectors where the profitability is more there. अरे तुम प्रॉफिट का क्या करोगे जब लोग खाली बैठा है घर पे? वो बस जलाएगा वो लोग घर से बाहर आके. You need people to be busy. Like, don't we get it? We can't have people sitting for shitty UPSC exams. Like, I mean, not the exam is not shitty, but the way the process, the way people live, ruin their lives over it is shitty, right? Can we please understand that manufacturing is not only about profitability and revenue and all, like GDP and all is fine. We need our people to be occupied. Boss, गलत हो जाएगा देश में. What are we doing until robotics? Are we waiting for robotics to come and destroy everything? Can we at least start? अरे खिलौनी गुड़िया बनाओ, बाद में सेमीकंडक्टर बन जाएगा किसी दिन अगर बना तो. Start with something ना. Can we please do that? The world is begging for us. We can't fall in love with our own villages. We cannot. Like, this is all bullshit. We need economic growth from every pore of this country at this point. I mean, I hope. Yeah, the brain earns more than the labor. Arey ho baba. But the brain also employs less people na. The brain employs less energy na. Labor is back breaking. You need more people in labor. That's the thing. Kumar is like, but don't you think India has less area than China, and for manufacturing land is important resource? अरे बाबा, चाइना का कितना पार्ट डेजर्ट है, इनहैबिटेबल है, वो चेक करो जाके. A good 20-25% of their country is uninhabitable. ऑस्ट्रेलिया कैसा 70-80% वैसा है, डेजर्ट है, उनका भी वैसा ही है. China is very bad that way. अरे okay, so you are bigger, so you can manufacture what? तो सिंगापुर तो should never do anything. Small country should. Taiwan तो should never manufacture anything. अरे there is something also called as quality manufacturing ना. सिंगापुर, सॉरी गलती से बोल दिया. But you look at Taiwan, where कहाँ से TSMC, ताइवान सेमीकंडक्टर्स, माय गुडनेस। अरे सब साइज पे थोड़ी होता है। तुम अरे तुम ऐसा माला मानना भाई एक दूसरे के ऊपर। मैं इधर 10वें माले पे रहता है, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग दूसरे तीसरे माले पे भी हो सकता है ना। देर आर थिंग्स दैट कैन बी मैन्युफैक्चर्ड। लॉस्ट सोल इज लाइक, यस इंडीड, बट सबको चाहिए 40 lakhs पर annum। नहीं, नहीं मिलेगा। किसको चाहिए 40 lakhs? नो, पीपल डोंट वांट 40 lakhs इन आवर कंट्री। People want like 10 lakhs in our country, they're more than happy. It works in most part of our country other than the cities. आप हमारे शहर से 50 किलोमीटर ऊपर नीचे चले जाओ, 10 लाख साल का आराम से लोग जी लेता है। आराम से लोग जी लेता है। We need to increase that, right? We need to increase that. That will be that is the aim, right? That we have of getting people to that level. Because at this point we are horrible. Like what is it? अपना एनुअल पीपल आर अर्निंग $2,000 है अपना, कितना $2,500। व्हाट इज आर GDP पर कैपिटा? $2,000 इज व्हाट? नथिंग। 1.5 लाख रुपए साल का। अपने को उसको 10-15 हज़ार डॉलर पे लेके आने का है, तब जाके कुछ होगा। देन दैट्स द होल पॉइंट, राइट? लाइक अ decent number is $10,000 per capita, capita, GDP per capita, so per annum. So that is what we want to look at, right? एंड मोर और लेस वो 8 से 10 लाख के ऊपर आ जाता है ना लॉस सोल। दैट इज द करेक्ट कैलकुलेशन, राइट? सो माई पॉइंट इज दैट वी नीड मैन्युफैक्चरिंग एंड वी नीड एन एटीट्यूड चेंज फॉर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, which I don't know, we are on YouTube and we are talking. The reality is the government will have to push it in the villages. That is the only way it will happen. That is the only way it will happen. बॉम्बे में कहाँ करोगे मैन्युफैक्चरिंग? दिल्ली विल्ली में नहीं करने वाले आप मैन्युफैक्चरिंग। एट मैक्स यू विल डू सम हाईटेक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग। That is what it is. Do you think 2014-24 was a lost decade for manufacturing? Yes, major lost decade, major. Our global share of global share of manufacturing has reduced in that time. In recent years, our global share of manufacturing output has reduced. We have lost that chance. We should have pushed on manufacturing. Farm laws were an important part of it. It was completely bungled. It was completely bungled the way they were put out, and they were bound to fail. And it's unfortunate they failed. That was one step towards making us a manufacturing power. It just failed. And also because see, you have to improve the uh, revenue per, yield per square meter and revenue per square meter, per acre for agriculture. That is another way our GDP increases. As simple as that. So yeah, our country needs to progress based on that, na. Lost souls, like I was playing devil's advocate. Manufacturing is the only way India can gain true independence, 100%. Guys, it is very easy for me to say कि tech करो, marketing करो, sales करो. That's all bullshit. Not everyone's going to work in Bandra Kurla complex air conditioning offices, right? Or do work from home like I do. We need to be aware. We need to be more humble in life. We need to look around us. We need to know the reality of our nation. And we need to propose solutions that are helpful for our own countrymen. The way I see it, our people need manufacturing jobs. क्या सब लोग ऐसा मैसूर में बैठ के बटन नहीं दबाएगा ना? we we have to have I'm not saying manufacturing is useless, brainless work. No, it is not. But it is nothing, like it has a lower entry barrier, compared to AI, prompt engineering and all that jazz, all that nonsense. But my point is you get what I'm saying, right? Like India has the chance, they are begging us to be that. And someone correctly pointed out that, hey, like it's not going to be just China plus India, it will be China plus India plus Vietnam plus Indonesia and so on and so forth. So that is what it is. See, ultimately China benefited because they chose the winner. They were very smart. They were like, the Americans are going to win the Cold War. And they were not sure, by the way. They took a very beautiful punt. They took a bet and it worked in their favor. And their people are out of poverty, and in fact, they're a superpower now. In fact, if you adjust it by purchasing power parity, the Chinese GDP per capita is higher than the Americans. That is the reality. That is the reality. Lost soul is like till we have our own manufacturing industry, we are still an economic colony. This is how much manufacturing is important. I won't call it economic colony. I know where you are getting that term from. You get it from the print. Na Shekhar Gupta put it. We are not an economic colony, but we are an economic underperformer and an embarrassment. That is what we are. Yeah, we are heavily dependent on the Chinese as well as the Americans, and that's fine. Dependency is fine, but can we have our own methods also of working? Oh, by the way, tariffs are an external term. Internal terms are customs, custom duty. So आप अगर कुछ import करते हो तो उसको आपको double देना पड़ता है ना कभी कभार, because there is 100% custom duty on it. While it acts as a tariff to an outsider, it acts as a custom duty to the insider. So अगर आप कहीं से कुछ order कर रहे हो बाहर से, उसका प्राइस क्यों बढ़ता है? Because you are paying custom duty. So the new, economic policy will be depending on which country you're getting it from. It will be cheaper or more expensive, right? And we have been told कि भाई कम करो आपका custom duty कम करो. And you know why custom duty is put up? So that your internal companies benefit. Your all the big companies that we have in India, all the local manufacturers we have in India, so that they benefit. They have lesser competition in the market, you know where they are like कि boss, ये बाहर का लोग आएगा खा के चला जाएगा. So we have that memory in our DNA, right? In a lot of ways, it's hard coded, because India wasn't conquered by a nation, it was conquered by a private company, the East India Company. So we do have a cultural reticence, a cultural resistance also, uh, to private enterprise in a way. Like people haven't forgotten, it wasn't long ago. It was only 170 years ago that we revolted against them, right? Like we have to remember that that was the end of it for them, but ultimately it was a private multinational corporation that took over the country, unfortunately, right? Remember that much. So yeah, so there is that angle also when it comes to capitalism in our nation, and now you must be like, why is America doing this now, right? Well, it's because there was a percentage of their population that was left behind. Globalization worked very well if you lived in Bangalore and Mumbai, man. It was fuck all if you lived in like the Rust Belt in the US. You have to accept that some people did not get a fair share of the globalization game. That is the reality. That is the reality. And they have votes and they voted. And they have voted कि globalization has not worked for us. We need to pull it down a little bit. We need to pull back a little bit. We want our jobs back and we want our economic power back. Let's stop being so goody goody with everyone. Let's look out for ourselves first. Fair enough. I kind of understand where they're coming from, to be very frank. I kind of understand. So, yeah. Kumar Nigam is like, bro, in China, ecosystem is there. You go in there as manufacturer, all your formalities will be done in a week. Here, getting a land is the biggest hurdle. हाँ ना तो चालू है ना. That's what I've been saying ना. Until we have land reform, labor reform, ease of doing business, कुछ नहीं होने वाला. कुछ नहीं होने वाला. We need another. We have only 10 years, guys. We have only 10 years. Swiggy Zomato से order करना is not growth. It is growth. It is development in a certain way, but real development is only going to happen when land acquisition is easier uh, and smoother. I don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe that is why I'm not in the parliament. I'm not in the cabinet either. So, but I'm telling you, जब तक लैंड और लेबर रिफॉर्म नहीं होता है, हमारा मैन्युफैक्चरिंग नहीं जा रहा है. एंड जब तक अपना मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इम्प्रूव नहीं होता, वी आर नॉट progressing as a nation. I can guarantee you of that. I mean, parts of us will, parts of the nation will. People like you and me will do well. But what about the rest? And that is not sustainable, no? We need the entire country to grow. We need the entire country to grow. For that, we need to adopt a capitalist mindset and not a socialist one. So I'll just leave you guys here for Polkeball. It's been a while since I did a live. Sorry about the delay. I was traveling, working. I'm back now. If there are any other topics you want me to talk about, you can just put it in the comment section. Please hit the like button, subscribe button if you're new here. I'll continue posting videos. The aim is to reach 10,000 subscribers soon. We are at 1,379. So not bad. We have done very well for ourselves.